Hello everyone and welcome to the Warcraft 1.1 patch preview for patch 6.2. Hello everyone and welcome to the Warcraft 1.1 patch note preview. My name is Desecration and today I am joined by an esteemed panel of casters, analysts, pro-rated players, and mythic raiders. Guys, welcome to the show. Joining me today, we have RBG leader and personality Gigasnail, the one and only 2300 rogue MNP. We have your favorite Russian, gladiator, and hero of the Alliance, Reinhart. And of course, mythic raider Steventosity and 2500 disc priest Pukez. Guys, welcome to the show and thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, no problem, man.
Yep.
Awesome. So today we are going to be breaking down what may well be perhaps the most controversial set of patch notes ever released by Blizzard Entertainment. If you guys have seen the flame that has come out from this, it is unreal. Like some of the comments, oh god. But what we're going to do today, we're just going to break down these patch notes and give Blizzard a score on what we think of these, their overall, how they did on it. So it's going to be out of 330. Each person has 5 points per class. So they're going to rate how Blizzard did with 5 points per class, so out of 5. And they can choose to give it 0 or 5. So guys, let's get right into it. The first class that I want to start out with here is the Death Knight class. So I got it on my phone here, and let me zoom in. So, first change is up. Anti-Magic Shell now absorbs 100% of all magic damage, up from 75%. However, damage absorbed no longer causes resolve, which is basically a PvE ability, which more damage you take, more damage you do. Under Frost, we have Frost Strike now deals 20% more damage. Howling Blast now deals 20% more damage. Obliterates damage increased by 20%, but deals 80% of normal damage against player in PvP combat, so no change PvP. Unholy Necrosis down 17%. And the Glyph of Icy Runes has been removed. And also with the change to AMS, it seems that that other AMS glyph is also not needed anymore as well. So guys, I want to go around. Give me your thoughts. Giga, I'm going to start... Actually, no, I want to start with Reinhartdarussian. Or that's not on the panel with this. Right, Vlad, what do you think of these DK changes?
Okay, so Necrosis is a shit thing in PvP and really doesn't matter, to be honest. Like, it doesn't proc as much because how the multi-strike works PvP versus PvP. So, Unholy just got a minor buff via AMS, but it wasn't that special because not a lot of teams would like to keep damaging DK when his AMS is up to feed him more running power. All it depends is if that 25% extra absorption give you more running power or not. So, otherwise, it's a decent buff, but not that much. Frost Decays, on the other hand, they got buffed a lot. First of all, their ability rate in PvP actually got a 4% damage nerf, not a buff, believe it or not. Just the way it's scaling and the way the math works. But 20% extra Frost Strike and 20% Howling Blast, I could see we have dual-wielding Frost Decays actually having a comeback.
Yeah, I never thought of that.
Because think about it, if they're gonna just spam Icy Touches as much as possible, and then Dual Wield Frost is famous for dishing out tons of frost damage, especially because they can afford Rune Razaries and a Fallen Crusader at the same time. So, Dual Wielding Frost Decays, I think, is gonna have a comeback relatively well too. On a side note, how am I satisfied with the patch notes? As Unholy DK player, I would say 1 out of 5. Unfortunately to say that, it depends how the gear is gonna scale and what's the unholy damage is gonna bring. But honestly, I don't feel like playing the games where it's all about playing the dampening war with a monk or something like that, because I think it's a very boring playstyle, and every other hunter, TSG, warrior, everybody else will require you to go frost. So with that said, I don't see anything being done about Unholy Decays. To make me happy, would either probably would have a Necrotic Strike come back, or Scourge Strike go full shadow damage, and they should work Necrosis and all the other damage around it. And the Blood Decays, AJ, I know you are pretty good Blood Decays, so to me, I don't think they got touched almost at all.
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak here for a moment, and then I want to pass it off to you guys. On this change, you know, I think that I'm going to back away from this. I think this is a fair patch change. I think that Unholy was overperforming in PvP, and I think that Frost was underperforming in PvP for this patch going into it. So I think that, and Frost definitely PvE underperforming. So from just a general perspective here, I'm going to say mostly good changes. The Frost needed the buff, the Unholy needed a slight nerf. Do I think that a 17% nerf was called for? Absolutely not. But overall, I'd give this probably a 3 out of 5. Guys, I'll pass off to you. Giga, you take it here.
Yeah, I mean, purely from an RBG perspective, I don't take Unholies very often. Usually it's a DK with Blood and Frost. Frost is already in a great position, so for it to get this somewhat of a buff, I'm excited about. It could lead to maybe double Frost DKs and RBGs, those kind of compositions starting to pop up a little bit more. Yeah, a little bit more like early season. And then on top of that, I think I'd give it a 4 out of 5. Maybe because I'm just kind of like hopefully optimistic about it. I don't personally play DK though, so it doesn't hurt me at all to see Unholies kind of go to the wayside. I would like to bring more DKs to my RBGs, so I'm hopeful. 4 out of 5.
Okay. All right, MNP, how about you, my man? What do you think?
All right. Just being more of an arena player nowadays, just seeing how Frost DKs perform in 3v3 arena, I think I don't see many Unholy DKs, but seeing the Frost DKs, they're performing really well, and just playing RLD, the AMS buff is really gonna hurt a lot of caster comps, and also it's I just feel like they're already unstoppable like freight trains, and like the damage buff is just a little too much. I'm gonna give it a 1 out of 5.
Oh, shoo, shots fired.
I really don't think they need the buff, and they've been a hero class ever since this game has started, and I don't think they need this at all.
I would not agree they would been hero class. Tell me, when was the last time DK won the tournament?
Yeah, I wouldn't agree either.
Like, it was back in Cataclysm Season 9.
That is true, but for people climbing the ladders, not rank 1s, but for most of the general community, the PvP community, that's actually climbing the ladders, you run into a lot of DKs, and then they usually just completely stomp on your healer, or anyone for that fact.
The low bracket domination.
I agree with you, man. Yeah. I think you got it right for arenas. I agree.
All right, Steventosity, I want to get your PvE perspective in just a moment, but we'll finish up PvP first. Pukez, what do you think about this change? I hand it off to you.
I like the anti-magic show because I've seen some scenarios in arenas from my perspective where hunters will kill you through AMS. And as far as Frost, I mean, yeah, that's a good thing, but I don't play DK, so it doesn't hurt me either way. I mean, I'm happy for you guys, but and Unholy DKs, I don't know what Necrosis really does or how it affects them, but I know Unholy is a great spread pressure in RBGs, so I kind of feel like they have a loss, but I'm going to give the DKs a 2 out of 5.
2 out of 5, okay, in disagreement. All right, Steventosity, you are our mythic raider on the panel. I want to get the PvE perspective with you.
Okay, so yeah, talking from just like a purely, you guys have already touched all the PvP stuff, and my 2 cents wouldn't really be helpful there anyways. So AMS dealing, basically absorbing 100% magical damage. I mean, it's useful. It definitely has its place in PvE. No longer proccing resolve though. It's kind of like a weird, like we're a little bit more survivable as a blood DK, and a little less damage there, which is kind of sad. I mean, ever since the Blood Boil nerf, it's been like a little rough on our, especially single target DPS. Frost has been really underperforming in PvE, and I think that's where these changes are coming from. It's unfortunate that they're overperforming in like arenas or whatnot, and then they're getting this buff. So that kind of is unfortunate. But yeah, they've been really underperforming. So I mean, this is super, super helpful. But the weird thing is, I'm surprised that they're nerfing Unholy, because I wouldn't say Unholy is overperforming in comparison to the other classes. Within the DK realm itself, yeah, they were the top performer, but like, they weren't like beating out other melee classes or other classes in general. Like they were really good on Chromog for BRF, and that was kind of it. Like that's what they shown on Chromog. And so that's kind of weird. I have to see the next raid set bonuses to be sure, to like be 100% sure. And then the Glyph of Icy Runes being removed basically means as a Blood DK, you no longer can keep Breath of Cindy up for 100% of a fight.
Yeah,
That's what
big.
that means. They didn't like that. They thought it was breaking the game, even though like you sacrificed like all your survivability to do that. But it was fun. I mean, I did it in LFR, like a non-progression content. It was.
I remember at
fun.
the beginning, at the beginning of the patch, I was able to do that. The double blood scumbag cop into keep the Breath of Cindergross up forever.
Oh yeah, you procced it before like
Yeah,
the gates
yeah.
opened. Yeah, and it just went off. It just
God,
didn't turn off. Yeah,
that
I did
was
it too a little
disgusting.
bit, even though like I'm not a PvPer. I just had to try it. Like it's so funny. But yeah.
Oh, for
But yeah,
what'd you give it?
Okay, I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5, just to be on the safe side. I want to give it a 3 out of. I would really like to see some talent changes in the DKs. DKs have really uninspired talents, like super uninspired, especially for PvE. It's like they're just like
Yeah.
they're kind of meh. Like most of the talents, I don't even use. So.
Yeah.
I mean, they just are there, and like, there's like one definitive like winner in like every single category for like every single fight. So it's kind of boring, but yeah.
Hey, either way, we got the results in, boys, and it is a 15 out of 30, so a 50%. Not good. That's a
That
failing
is not a
grade.
pass.
So we're gonna fail them on the Death Knight patch notes here. So let's go ahead and move on. Next up, we're going to be talking about Druid. I want to get through this a little bit more quickly, guys, so
Okay.
wrap this, but all good. Okay, so Druid. So, in general, Frenzied Regeneration now refunds a proportional amount of excess healing dealt back to the Druid as Rage. Thrash now deals 10% more damage. These are baseline changes. Going into Balance, Mastery, Total Eclipse, has reduced effectiveness, so 5% nerf into that, by 5%. Feral. This is going to cause a lot of debate. Rake now deals 10% more damage. Rip now deals 10% more damage. Oh my god. Guardian. Bear Form now increases armor by 285% for Guardian Druids. Healing Touch no longer cancels Bear Form for Guardian Druids. That's big. Savage Defense now also reduces physical damage taken by 25%. Talents. Dream of Sonaris effect can now be stored up for 40 seconds for Guardian. Up from 20 seconds for Guardian Druids. Force of Nature Summon Trent now does 100% more damage. And for Glyphs, the Glyph of Untamed Stars is now automatically learned at level 75. So, a lot of mixed changes for the Druids. I'm sure that the Feral is going to cause a lot of debate here. Gigasnail, let's start with you on this. Because those are big Guardian changes, too. It may well bring back the Guardian spec, I'm thinking here, but let's start off with you.
I don't know if it'll bring back the Guardian spec. Honestly, if you're gonna have like Guardian or Prot Warriors, you're either gonna have to go to like Korea or something, or you're going to have to see you get to see in-game flag mechanic changes. That's the only way you're gonna see tank switches in RBGs. Other than that, I don't know again why you would buff Feral. They're already one of the strongest like melee 1v1 and 1v2 classes in the game, so it's unreal. Like they're buffing in the wrong places and they're nerfing in wrong places, like all over these changes.
Boy.
It's crazy. I would give it a 1 out of 5.
1 out of 5 given by Giga.
Yeah.
Oh boy. MNP, how about you, my man? What do you think of these?
Alright, so I hate Ferals just playing a rogue in arena. I mean, you can't get a re-stealth with Fairy Fire. That's already too OP. And now they're making their Rip do more damage, which is a bleed or a Rip and Rake. And I mean, you can't hide behind a pillar and recoup and re-stealth on a Druid if their dots are doing more damage. As for Guardian, I don't think it's going to make a difference in PvP, but PvE, it's also died down. So I think it may show something in PvE, but overall, I'd say for PvE, I'll average it at a 3. I'll give it a 3.
3 out of 5. Okay. From our Raider and PvP here. Alright, Vlad, how about you, man? Feral change.
I think just in general, to be honest, Mystifan, Worlds of Draenor, Feral Druids are just a disaster of a class design, to be honest. The class-centric design was basically basically kind of grind the enemy team down with a really heavy bleeds and a really heavy control via Cyclone. And it worked for them from BC all the way to Cataclysm. Pharaohs were like in a great spot where they were not overpowered and they were not underpowered. They were always a solid class. They always were rank 1 gladiator viable. There were like, even back in Wrath of the Lich King, there were double healer Pharaoh. That's how good their damage was, but it wasn't over the top. And then in Mist of Pandaria, for some reason, somebody decided to give them Shadow Dance ability. And then they gave them a bunch of other like knockback and stuff like that. So after that, developers like, whoa, wait a second, let's pull back there and let's take off the instant cyclone. And in fact, to be honest, I loved the instant cyclone. I loved outplaying people on the instant cyclone. I liked dispelling it. I liked watching Hydra's video where he would AoE cyclone behind the pillar, so that when the Pharaoh gets to him, he loses the buff of the instant cyclone. I think it was a really good mechanic, and they scrapped it in favor of just the stupid Mongo upfront damage, which Pharaoh should never be about. So, and then here comes the Warlords of Draenor, and not only didn't fix those stupid ideas of actually making Pharaoh kind of like a rogue class instead of being what it is, a Pharaoh, the bleed class. They actually further increased it to the point where the bleed did very little damage, and then their ravage and their upfront damage was really high, and their ferocious bites, which was silly. So them buffing bleed damage is good, but they need to tone down the instant damage from Pharaohs. At least that's the way I look at it. So I would say it's 2 out of 5, not 1 out of 5. I think the direction of buffing the bleed damage is good. They just need to tone down the upfront damage now.
Okay, I'll take it next year. I'm going to disagree with the... I'm personally not a fan of the instant clones. I think it was appropriate them removing that back in MoB, and that's just my opinion on it. But honestly, for these guys looking at the changes, now they did nerf balance. I'm not a fan of that change at all. They did buff Guardian, though, which I do like. Do I personally think it's going to see competitive play? No. Do I think it's going to see play in the lower brackets? Yes, I think it will. And the reason I say that is because they now have an extra kind of defensive that they can use in bear form. They now have the ability to... the Savage defense got buffed a little bit. They're going to be brought up a little bit. You're going to see it, I think, more around the 1,700-1,800 bracket. Are you going to see it around 2,400 bracket? No, I don't think so at all. So from an RBG and PvP perspective, personally, not a fan of these patches more than I am a fan of them. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. So... Steventosity, I'm going to pass off to you. I want to hear that PvE perspective right now.
Okay, so yeah, like it's like complete opposite. So like Feral right now in PvE, garbage class. They're just like they're underperforming like terribly. Like the bleeds and stuff, all the stuff you guys are talking about, like not that big of a deal in PvE. So they needed a buff if they wanted to be played. If you want to bring one to a raid, you need a buff. Balance has been overperforming, like Mythic Guild stack balance druids on like most fights, like they'll bring like 5. So yeah, they needed a nerf. Guardian, I'm really happy to see these changes, especially the armor one. They really needed that. Healing Touch is like a quality of life change for Guardian druids, especially like when you get that Healing Touch proc and you're spamming it, and then it goes away, or you spam it too many times, and then you like come out of bear form. Really annoying when you're tanking. Savage defense also, like they just need like the bear tank was just like not that great. So like all these things are pretty good. Frenzied regeneration is also really nice, like that buff. It's more of a quality of life change than it is like a straight buff. But like yeah, it makes it a little easier to manage that rage. So that's. Yeah, I think it's good. Glyph of Untamed Stars, that just had to happen because at level 75, it's like you really need that. So it's funny, but yeah, go ahead.
How'd you give it?
I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5 actually.
4 out of 5, okay.
Yeah, because Guardians they needed buffs, Balance needed nerf, Feral needed buff for PvE at least. I know, I guess it sucks in PvP, but it is what it is.
Yeah. All right, cool.
We're used to a lot of things sucking in PvP. It's okay.
Yeah.
Oh God. All right, Pukes. We'll end it with you, my man. These druid changes. What do you think?
Yeah, man. I think Frenzied Regeneration is good all around because I mean, it really didn't do that much healing. But in Thrash, it really did no damage. I'm glad they buffed that. They kind of needed it. Like, I mean, you just might as well just like throw a spit wad at somebody if you're going to use that spell, but now it might do something. For balance, it's only a 5% nerf, which I think they did need. And for Feral, I don't agree with the buffs in PvP terms because they already do a lot of damage, and they can pretty much get anybody down to pop their cooldowns without Incarnation. And then, like, once you're that low and they pop Incarn, like, GG.
GG.
Yeah.
Man.
GG.
You're not going to run from a Feral. You got bleeds, bruh. Guardian. Yeah, Guardians, I think you can make a comeback. I mean, I like it. But all around, I'd give the Druid about a 4.
4 out of 5. Wow, okay. So some very mixed results there from the PvP panel. I'm going to add all this up right here. So we've got a 2 plus 3 plus 1 plus 4 plus 2, and then a 4. Add out to a 16 out of 30, so still another failing grade. So unfortunately, not too good there from the panel. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to touch on the very next set here. Alright guys, and we are back once again. We're going to be moving on to Hunters now, and I want to start by reading out what their changes are. So, general baseline, Aspect of the Fox, it's gone. Alright? Marksmanship, aim shot now deals 15% more damage. Survival, Mastery, Essence of the Viper has increased in effectiveness by 19%. That's a pretty big buff. Explosive Shot now deals 15% less damage. Big nerf. Serpent Sting now no longer deals an initial tick of damage when the periodic effect is first applied. Talents, okay, I'm sure this is a big one here. A Murder of Crows now deals only 80% of normal damage in PvP combat.
Thank God.
Oh boy. Force of Nature Summit, oh hold on, I'm on the wrong one here. And the final one is Barrage now deals only 80% of normal damage in PvP combat as well. Additionally, the ability no longer hits invisible or stealth targets. So,
Good.
big changes there.
That's amazing.
That's
Yeah.
huge.
I'll be special guysing that from now on.
Yeah. Spectral Guys Inc.
Oh my god. Alright, Pukes, let's start it out with you, because you've been going last for the first few times. What do you think about this, man?
Aspect of the Fox back in the day when I played a Hunter, it was huge. I mean, we was like a warrior. We stand still it, but I'm not sure what all has changed with it since Wrath of the Lich King, so as far as that being removed, I'm not sure if it's a good thing. For aim shot, yeah, I mean, it could take some damage nerfs in my opinion, but I mean, I'm happy that they got some kind of buff because they look like they're getting a lot of nerfs. And as far as survival, I'm glad that the Serpent Sting doesn't tick, because I know when I run Cupid Cleave, that would ruin a lot of things for us.
Overall, what do you think, man?
Overall, I think you guys are getting fucked.
Oh boy.
Because look at them talent buffs, or man, fuck, I messed up. But yeah, look at those talent nerfs there.
I mean, overall, what would you give it for a scoring?
I'd give it a 5. I like these changes.
Hey, okay, so we got our first perfect score on the panel today. How about that? All right, Giga, what do you think, man?
I'm glad to see a bunch of these hunter nerfs that are coming in. Hunters have been ridiculously overpowered at the beginning of expansions. This one particularly. Really glad about the Murder Crows. Really glad about the Barrage and Stealth. Although I can't give it a perfect 5 out of 5. I have to go 4 out of 5 just because of the Fox. I don't know if that was necessarily a good idea. I think there was a lot of potential in that ability that we hadn't even quite realized yet. So that could have gone in a really positive direction for the game. And instead, I think maybe a few people might have just taken advantage of it and they nerfed it just across the board and got rid of it. So I'm sad. 4 out of 5.
4 out of 5. All right. Now this one, I don't play a hunter. I don't know too much about hunters, so I gotta say particularly neutral in this one. But I am gonna say that I do agree with Giga in the sense that the Barrage and Murder Crows was just out of control in PvP. Aspect of the Fox, for the most part, I do agree with what you have to say here, Giga. I I'm gonna stick with what you said. I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5 as well. All right, so MNP, my man.
All right. Playing a rogue, that barrage thing just taking me out of stealth, it got really annoying. But I'm gonna go ahead and follow along what what Giga said. I mean, aspect of the fox, it didn't need to be removed. I think it was perfectly fine for them to have it, but the damage they were doing with the what murder of crows was just too much. I'll give it 4 also.
4 out of 5. Okay. All right, Vlad. What do you think?
Damage definitely had to be toned down, and the fact is that damage is manageable. Their CC isn't usually, and I remember when Supatiz was commentating our tournaments, he's like, okay, he bopped before the Murder of Crows came off the CD. Okay, he's done. It's GG. That's it. Like, this is literally his commentating. Alright, he wasted his bop. GG, he's dead. So, yeah, the abilities had to be nerfed. The aspect of the fox was introduced from the Wrath of the Lich King when hunters had mana, and then they went to the focus, and they became focus starved. So, I think what they should have done is they should have actually built up more an aspect of the fox and make the hunter stance where you could separate a good player from the great player by just the sheer amount of stance dancing, thus increasing the complexity of the class, and they went the opposite. They actually tried to reduce the skill down of the class even further. So I would say 2.5 out of 5.
2.5 out of 5, so a negative review out of Reinhart here. And
neutral.
Neutral. Okay, yeah, no, that is true. So it's neutral, slightly negative. Okay, fair enough. All right, Steventosity, my man, the PVE god here. What do you think?
Actually, the aspect of the fox being removed is huge. It's huge for PVE. So PvP, I guess you guys didn't use it a lot, but in PvE, it is a very, very important talent that skill that people use. Like for heavy movement times during boss fights, you have to pop aspect, you chain aspects. I kind of agree with it, only because like hunters, like right now, are in such a good place in PvE that they can be brought to any fight, like across whatever, and be good. Like they're just good in any. Like if you want a hunter, you can always take another hunter because they're good at everything. Like their ability to move and always be casting, like their damage never stops. It's quite good.
That's kind of the problem in PvP also, by the way.
Yeah, definitely. So the survival nurse, kind of weird, but I guess like right now BM is like outperforming all the other specs, but yeah, I mean I like to see marksman. I like marksman as a hunter, so I'm kind of glad that got a buff, but yeah, and it's too bad the barrage stuff and the murder of crows. I'm kind of sad to see because like when I play PvP, like I usually play a hunter, and it was fun just to annihilate people. But I mean, I'm not even good at PvP, and I was doing good, so there was probably something wrong there. So yeah.
So overall, I mean, what do you think?
Oh yeah, sorry about the score. I'm gonna give it a 4.
A 4? See?
Yeah, because they like hunters already bring so much that they don't really need any more utility to bring to the raid, and they were bringing like aspect of the fox was like a huge utility. Like it was a lot actually, and they were already good. So like you didn't bring them for the utility, but they had utility too. It was crazy.
All right, so we have.
It's funny actually. Real quick, AJ, before you move on, it's funny you mentioned utility because the very next class is going to be mage, and I'm sure we'll get there. But they're in the RBG community. Both those spots and the compositions are called utility specs. So like, and it's usually hunter versus mage. Which do you bring for your base set and your utility? So now that hunter's using utility, I'm going to be interested to see what happens if we see more mages and RBGs or something like that as a result.
So hey, we got the score right, and it's about an 80. All right, so we're giving them. It's a C+.
Did they pass?
Yes, they did pass. It's a 23.5 out of 30.
Blizzard passed. Well,
congratulations,
done.
guys. They're passing the patch notes.
At Warcraft devs, well played.
So
GG.
they've passed on the hunter notes. All right, so let's go ahead and I want to move on here. We've got mage now. Okay, so we've got some arcane changes, some frost changes, and some baseline stuff. So baseline, amplify magic, it's gone. All right, Arcane. All right, Mana Adept right now for Arcane has reduced in effectiveness by 6%. Arcane Missiles now deals 10% more damage. So buff to Arcane Missiles and a nerf to their mastery. Moving on to Frost, Mastery Icicles, big Frost buff, 13% increase in that. Now that's, remember, you have multiple Icicles, so that's a big change. And of course, Brain Freeze now has a 15% increased chance to trigger on each multi-strike, down from 25%, so a 10% nerf to their multi-strike. So they're the big mage changes there. I'm going to actually start with the PvE perspective here. Steventosity, what do you think about these changes here?
Okay, so just like the Hunter, mages are like super overperforming right now, especially arcane mages and fire mages. I'm surprised they didn't do anything with fire. Fire is really good too. Arcane needed a nerf because, yeah, they were just they were crazy. So they lost a little bit of the utility. Ant Magic wasn't as big of a deal as Aspect, but it was nice to have. So that and Frost, I mean, I've always seen Frost as the PvP mage spec, so like I don't know why they would buff it if it's doing good. I don't know if it's doing good in PvP or not. So it was doing awful in PvE. I doubt this buff will make Frost viable in PvE or like really like one of the top performers, unless their set bonus is like insane or something. But I doubt it will change. I'm guessing Arcane and Fire is still going to be at the forefront. I'll give this a, this one's actually well tuned. I'll give it a 5.
5 out of 5. Okay,
Yeah.
so our second perfect score of the night. Okay, all right, Pukes. Now I'm gonna hand this one off to you. I'm gonna have you go next. What do you think, my man? Mage changes.
Amplify Magic being gone kind of saddens me, but I mean it's like a heal, so I think they could use it. But Mastery being reduced, that's okay, I guess. But that's for Arcane, so it doesn't really affect PvP. Arcane Missile's doing 10% more, good for PvE. ABN will probably like that.
Yeah.
Frost.
Oh boy.
Let's see, for Frost, Brain Freeze now has 15% more to trigger multi-strike, down from 25. Yeah, that's going to greatly affect PvP, I believe. That's 15% nerf. No, my bad. It's a 10% nerf, but I'm going to give the mage about a 4. I'm not a big mage player, so.
Okay. Now, I've actually played a little bit of mage back in Cataclysm, so I'm not too up to date on them, but I have played the class before. And from what I've seen in Warlords of Reinhart, they're really a kind of like a one-shot class. Like, they're there for their one-shot, and then they have a lot of utility out of that. They have the polymorphs. They're there mainly for like the CC and then the big burst. Personally, with this patch, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more sustained damage out of the Frost Mage class instead of just being so locked up in their burstiness. And I don't think that we really got that this patch. So overall, myself, I'm not personally a fan of these changes. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 just because I didn't see that more sustained. But MNP, I'll hand off to you, man. What do you think?
Alright, first off, I could really care less about these changes. I mean, I like the fact that they're doing something to Arcane. I mean, maybe we'll see something out of it. I mean, I just find Arcane mages interesting in general. The Icicles is 13% more effective. I don't necessarily like that. I think their damage is okay where it is, but I think mages, like, they just have a little too much utility. Their damage is fine. I mean, it's right where it should be. It's perfectly balanced for PvP. But when it comes to utility, I mean, when you can put someone without a trinket into a Deep Freeze, into a Frost Jaw, into a Ring of Frost, into a triple poly, and then somebody comes in with another CC right out of that, it's a little ridiculous. But I'll just go ahead and give it a 4 out of 5. Just overall, don't really care too much about these changes.
Okay. Alright, Giga, my man. Break it down.
These changes are terrible.
Oh! Someone agrees with me.
Losing Amplified Magic, okay, whatever. I understand for the greater good, sometimes your class needs to get nerfed or buffed in independent situations. Okay, I'll accept it. But to do this, like, half-assed buff to Frost Frost, at least in terms of an RBG perspective, is not doing enough damage. So the buff is good, but this other buff to Arcane, like with the missiles, it's good, but it's not good enough. Where I gotta speak for my boy Hansel here. Where's the fire damage buff? That's really where mages need to be fine-tuned.
We already have on the panel.
If anything, you could like nerf, you know, Arcane or Frost, then I'd be willing to accept that. All mage specs actually need a buff, in my personal opinion, from RBGs. But I'd rather take a nerf in those other two and a buff in fire, or real fine tuning in Frost. Something, you know, meaty and substantial. And I don't think we got that. I think this is really weak and just housekeeping from Blizzard's perspective. So I'll give it a 2 out of 5.
2 out of 5. All right, Vlad, let's get the Russian perspective in on this one, man. What do you think?
Honestly, Frost mages, I don't think that's big of a deal at all to even care at all, like, for a PvP perspective. They're buffed their sustained damage, if anything, with icicles, and it's really, like, it's okay, but it's not really that big of a buff. In terms of the nerf, from Brain Freeze, the multi-strikes, again, it doesn't work as well in PvP versus PvE, so overall it's not a big deal. Toning down their utilities via Amplified Magic, I actually thought it's a really good cooldown. It was very unique cooldown too. I think they should have actually kept it, for that matter. What I would wanted to see a little bit about the mages is nerf to their survivability. I think their survivability is actually a little bit too high. I heard a lot of like high players even said like, wow, their survivability is like too good and they're too elusive. So maybe like nerf a little bit of their blazing speed and stuff like that. But overall, I think the changes are really not gonna make that much of a difference in PvP, and just kind of like making changes for the sake of making changes. I'll give it like 3 out of 5 probably.
3 out of 5. Okay, so let me add that all up here, and we have a 21 out of 30, which accounts out to, did they pass? They got a 70 on it. Alright, so we're giving them a C- on that. So, a 21 out of 30 on the mage changes, so some fans, some not fans. But either way...
Well, they definitely could have made a much bolder stance on mages, and, you know, maybe their math will work out, you know, better than we envision it working out. And so I think you might either really like what they did or you might really hate it, depending on how it plays out in a real server scenario.
Scenario.
Yeah.
Right.
Scenario.
Either way, we're about to move on to some changes that have probably caused the most controversy on here. Next to the Pharaoh changes, we're moving on to the Monk.
Oh god.
Oh boy. Alright, so let's just get this over with while we can. General baseline, Blackout Kick, 30% less damage. Provoke now has a 30-yard range, down from 40 yards. Tiger Palm, 30% damage nerf. Tiger Strikes no longer triggers from multi-strikes, but now provides a 30% increase to multi-strike chance while active. Brewmaster, Blackout Kick no longer increases the stagger amount for Brewmaster monks. Ooh. Stance of the Sturdy Ankh now increases armor by 125%, up from 75%, and provides a 10% base stagger percentage. Additionally, the stagger effect no longer works against attacks which ignore armor. And here's the big ones that are causing controversy. Windwalker, Fist of Furies, down 30%. Hurricane Strike, down 30%. And Tiger Eye Brew now increases damage dealt by 10% per charge consumed, up from 6%. So a slight 4% buff to their overall kind of like burst, but an overall nerf to their sustain. Talents, Chi Explosion now deals 30% less damage for Windwalker monks. Serenity now lasts 5 seconds for Brewmaster monks, down from 10 seconds. Guys, holy crap, there's a lot of nerfs in there.
Yeah.
Giga, why don't you take this one here? Start it off.
Well, I can tell you right now, we don't run Brewmasters very often in RBGs. Mostly that's the Chinese region. They usually do that more. With all these nerfs, though, later Venfuki, he's pretty much gone. I think all the TSG is pretty much just going to be wrapped up about 3.5 days into their career for this season. So, I mean, again, this is another one of those situations where as a PvP player, I think both in Arena and in RBGs, you're just looking at this going, like, this is obviously, it has to be a PvE nerf, right? Because, like, this was already an underperforming class in PvP, so I don't understand, like they're just literally, like, cutting the Achilles tendon of, like, the worst classes across the board in PvP. So 1 out of 5, completely unnecessary.
Oh,
just
boy.
Takes a class completely out of player versus player.
You know, I'm gonna completely and utterly agree with you on everything you just said there. They are one of probably the worst classes in PvP right now, and they were just kind of making their comeback. And as soon as they made their comeback, it was like Blizzard said, "No, you can't be viable. You're a Windwalker monk. You will never be viable in PvP." And they decided to like slam down these nerfs on them. From a PvE perspective, and strictly looking at data, they were the best AoE spec in the game right now in PvE. So I'm gonna go off and on. These are definitely PvE changes, but the fact that they did not differentiate them from PvP means that they completely just destroyed the Windwalker and Brewmaster spec in PvP. For myself, since they did not make the PvP separate, 0 out of 5. MNP, let's move on to you, my man. Oh, your mic is muted. Your mic is muted. Hold on.
Sorry.
There we go. Okay.
There we go. Alright, so I think Windwalker's damage was perfectly fine where it was. Maybe a little strong. I could see maybe a 5% nerf overall. But I just think they need a healing nerf or maybe a mobility nerf because, no matter what, you can't catch up to them if they're running away from you. You can't get away from them if they're chasing you. And when they do run away from you, they just heal up and, they're 1v1 gods in my opinion. They're right up there with a feral. But overall, I'd say 1 out of 5. I don't like it at all. I was actually thinking about after facing that TSG or was it Windwalker DK. Like I saw it, I actually started leveling my monk just a little bit, just for 2 days, and then I see this. It's like the dream is gone. The dream is gone.
Got about half a week into my monk this year.
Oh boy. All right, Steventosity now. Being the PvEer on the panel, you might be the only one here that might possibly remotely agree with these changes.
I actually fully agree with these changes.
What?
So, Brewmaster monks were so good in comparison to every other tank. They would just you didn't need any of the other classes. You didn't need DKs. You didn't need prot warriors. You didn't need prot pallies. A bear was just unacceptable in anything. They were so good. It was insane. It was nuts. It was absolutely insane what they could do. They made every fight trivial. I would bring my monk, and I would just you could just make fights trivial with them. It was insane. The Windwalker nerfs in particular, I don't know if I agree fully with that big of a nerf though. In all honesty, even as a PvEer, that seems really quite big. They were really good on council fights, and they had they did have good AoE in certain situations. I don't want to get into the whole thing, but council fights they were really good at. PvEers will know what I'm talking about. They were excellent at council fights. They weren't really good at bursting down ads. That was a warlock's job, or a bunch of other jobs. Classes can do that well, but yeah, they had their place, and now they don't have their place anymore. On the raid team, basically, it's kind of I think they even overdid it for the Windwalker, not for the Brewmaster, but definitely for the Windwalker. And Serenity, that's actually a huge nerf. That's bigger than all the other ones actually. Well, maybe not the blackout kick. It's all rolled into one, because before you could Serenity, blackout kick, and just get 2 minutes of shuffle. It was nuts. And just be invincible, basically. I can see why you couldn't do that in PvP, obviously, but in PvE, you just sit on a boss, so, yeah. I agree with these. I'm gonna give it the Brewmaster, I'm gonna give 5 out of 5. The Windwalker, I'm gonna give 1 out of 5. I don't know, maybe
So that's a 3 out of 5 average.
Yeah, 3 out of 5, I guess.
Alright, so... Actually, it's more like a 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah,
Okay, so we'll do a 3.5 out of 5.
I'm really split on these.
Okay, alright. Pukes, my man, what do you think?
I think the overall general changes look pretty terrifying for monks. That is a lot of damage gone. That actually, Vinruki, you might as well just, quit your monk right now and just reroll mage again. For Windwalkers, the Tiger's Eye Brew is pretty good change. I still don't think you're going to kill anybody with it, but it is going to be a little bit of a change. But yeah, I'm just going to give a monk a 0 out of 5. I'm not impressed with any of these changes.
Okay.
As far as Brewmasters, I don't see a need for Brewmasters in PvP, so Whatever their changes are for PvE, I mean, that really doesn't affect me.
Okay. All right, Vlad, my man. Wrap it up here. What do you think?
Basically, I think that Chuck Norris stopped playing World of Warcraft. That's how big of a nerfs are. It's just, it's like everybody already said. Like as soon as they start getting a vibe, as soon as they start seeing this little shed of light, it was just snuffed out completely. This is where I think that just alienating PvP from PvE would have been. It's a great example of that it needs to be done in the game. It needs to be done for actually both parties to actually fully enjoy their classes. Because Mags did a little bit too much damage and they were a little bit too much tanky. But when you convert them to PvP, they were not as good. So it kind of breaks both metas at the same time. So that's all I can say. In terms of patch notes, obviously. Brewmasters had to be nerfed for PvE reasons, and that's the only thing that actually keeps me at 2 out of 5.
2 out of 5. Okay. So let me add that up here, guys. I don't even think we're breaking 10 with this one. So we've got a 0, a 1, a 1, a 2, and a 3.5. That comes out to a 7.5 out of 30. Holy moly. So that's going to be... We're giving them a 25%. That is like an E-.
It's only the PvE that's keeping up, too.
Oh, God. So.
That's what you get for just making a change that is so biased on one end of the spectrum of the game.
So very low score, 25% I got on that. Ugh, yikes. Okay. So, obviously a lot of disagreement on the monk changes, but let's go ahead and move on to... This is going to be a pretty quick one here. One change for paladins. Retribution, Mastery, Hand of Light has reduced effectiveness by 6%. Not a really big change there. So 6% nerf to Ret Pally's Mastery. Personally, I would have liked to have seen a little bit different changes to like Save by the Light and those kind of really big cooldowns that the paladins bring. I think that they're in a pretty solid place right now as far as PvP goes. I don't really care about this change too much. I'm just going to leave it at a 5 out of 5. Let's pass it off to Vlad. What do you think, my man?
Honestly, I don't really see much of a changes on paladins. They're very neutral. But then again, I would say their paladins are actually in a pretty decent spot. I mean, a Holy Pally might be a little bit overtuned, and maybe Holy Saved by the Light needs a bit of a nerfing in terms of the absorption and how much absorption it does. But keep in mind that the Holy Paladins is one of those classes where as soon as they get CC'd and they don't have cooldowns to bring target back up from being endlessly CC'd, they're pretty much suffering pretty badly on representation. So I think they need a Save by the Light. I just think they need to have it a little bit toned down. But overall, Paladin's in a great shape and I don't see that much changes coming to them in general. And it's one of those few classes where I would say 5 out of 5. Well, 4 out of 5 I would say. Just to be a perfectionist.
Alright, Giga, my man, what do you think?
From PvP, especially an RBG perspective, I kind of like bringing a Ret. Most teams don't unless you're YOLOing or low MMR. That being said, Rets were in a slightly better than decent position from PvP in general. So the nerf, while maybe valid, is maybe too much. I don't know. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 just because I'm one of the few higher-end leaders who brings Ret Paladins, and so it's kind of fun when I do. It's something to shake it up. And so now I don't think I'll be able to do that as much. So not many people are doing it, and now I can't either. Just makes me sad. 3 out of 5.
3 out of 5. MNP, my man, what do you think?
Alright, for Holy, I think it's alright. They're pretty well rounded. For Ret, I think I think they need a little bit more of a nerf just because, their survivability as a DPS is more than any other. 2 bops in a bubble and sacks on top of that, it's just too much to bring down, plus amazing self-heals. It's way up there just with feral self-heals and just some other DPS class self-heals that just unnecessary. I think it could have been more of a change, so I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5.
2 out of 5. Okay, looking for a little more there. Alright, Steventosity, my man, PvE perspective. Is this really a big change for Ret?
No, it's not a big change, and that's the problem. Ret Paladins actually needed to be buffed in PvE. They are not a strong class. No one brings them. On my guild, we try to drop off our Ret Paladins faster. We try to drop off Ret Paladins, pick up Boomkins whenever we can, man. Ret Paladins just aren't in a good place. They're too random. They're too proc dependent. They need to be a little bit more dependable. I mean, sometimes they'll pull like amazing DPS. Next pull, they do like half that for some reason, and they did exactly the same thing. So they need to be like streamlined a little bit, fixed. I think their class is in not a good place right now for PvE. So the nerf is weird. In all honesty, like I don't know why they nerfed them. Maybe this is a PvP thing. It doesn't make sense to PvE at all, like in the slightest.
Even
Maybe
from a
scaling?
PvP perspective, though, this is maybe scaling, because this is like very. It would be hard to notice this if you weren't looking for it, even in PvP.
Yeah, maybe scaling. That's probably maybe it's scaled like way too well.
You know what though? Red Paladins especially are one of those classes and specs where if they're even overtuned slightly, it just scales exponentially. Like it gets crazy if reds are even slightly overpowered, really quickly.
It does.
In PvP at least.
What would you give it, man?
Oh yeah, sorry about that. I'm giving this one it's 0 out of 5. They didn't do anything.
Wow.
Yeah, they did nothing. They did
Didn't
nothing.
do anything.
Lack of
Holy
changes.
shit.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Pukes.
I like that. That's bold.
Well, my main alt is a ret, and I play ret only, really. But, I mean, I have played holy some. I don't see where this really greatly affects anything, but one thing I'd like to talk about is how, to be fair, we do have 2 bops, 2 sacks, 2 hands of freedoms, and that greatly impacts PvP because you get somebody low. Oh look, he's bop. You can't kill him. I mean, like, think about it. You really just cannot kill anybody that plays. He's just gonna save them, and he also has execution sentence, so he can instantly bring them back up from almost no health to at least 50% health. And I think with clemency, if you do have 2 bops, I think it should be. Use it on one target, and then you can't use it again on the same target until the cooldown is refreshed.
So overall, what would you give it?
I'd give it about a 3.
3 out of 5. Okay, so let me throw that in there and add it all up. So we got a 5, a 2, a 3, a 3, a 4, and a 0. Comes out to a 17 out of 30. So you wouldn't think that we would have such a low score from from just one little change there, but obviously most of us wanting to see a little bit more of the lack of change.
More like a lack of.
Yeah. So either way, let's move on to the priest, and I'm sure this will have. I know that there was a little bit of discussion going on a little earlier on the priest, more so about the lack of changes than changes. So let's take a look here. Shadow Mastery Mental Anguish has been reduced in effectiveness by 10%, so 10% nerf to Mastery of Shadow Priest. Shadow Form no longer applies its visual effects to the priest mount. We don't care. Glyph of Shadowy Threatens now extends Shadow Form's visual effect to the priest. Okay, so we don't care about those. So it's really just a nerf to their mastery as a Shadow Priest, 10% nerf. No other changes. I'm going to go on a line and say that was a good change for Shadow Priest. I think that they definitely needed to be toned down in PvP, especially in RBGs in general. They were a must-take. You saw even the double Shadow Priest count.
Oh, you saw triple and quadruple.
Yeah, of course. But the problem is that what I don't like about this is that they did not change disc, and they certainly didn't buff Holy. I don't know how Holy is performing in PvE right now, and I'll send it off to you next, Steven, but personally, I would have liked to have seen some kind of a buff for both the disc healing, the disc and the Holy spec. So personally, I'm going to keep it at a 3 out of 5, just because I like the Shadow Priest changes, but would have definitely liked to have seen more. Steven, from a PvE perspective, what do you think?
It's so funny to hear that. It's like the opposite. So like Disc Priest and Holy Priest are like you bring a Disc Priest. You always bring a Disc Priest. They're good. They're like, I mean, preventative damage is like amazing in PvE. They're quite good in PvE. They did not need a buff. If anything, they needed a nerf to help out the other healers, like give them something to do, basically. The nerf to Shadow Priest, I guess if they were really overperforming in PvP, that is crazy. They are not the best class in, like, okay, right now, like at top gear levels, they are finally starting to perform. Like they scaled really well with gear, but they're still not the greatest class ever. Like the nerf, I'm gonna say maybe preemptive for their next set bonus. Maybe something to do with it. I'm gonna give this a 3 out of 5. I mean, they didn't break it, but they didn't fix it either, really. And Holy Priests are like they're good in PvE too. Like most priests will be like, I'm gonna be a disc because they're just like you just have a disc priest. I mean, you just do. It's just something that PvEers do. So.
Okay. Now, Vlad, I know you used to play Shadow Priest. You may still do that. What do you think about these changes?
Well, first question I have for you is, what do you think of guys about Shadow Priest survivability?
It's fine.
It's decent. Yeah.
It's just slightly below par.
Yeah, I would agree with Gigasnail. I mean, it's slightly below par. Like, you can put out some healing, but I just don't think it cuts the chase.
Yeah, you can't live lord it, that's for sure. But if you're a smart player, you can make some clutch plays and, have a counter to some things.
Yeah, and it's kind of a Shadow Priest historically known been very heavily healer dependent. Like in terms of skill in arena, if you have a great skilled healer in arena, Shadow Priest can just demolish the enemy team, and vice versa. So I think that the damage nerf for PvP is warranted. For PvE, most likely preventative, because scaling of Shadow Priest has actually been always known to be relatively on the high end. I want to see some minor defensive buff or minor utility buff for them, but that's about it. I think it's like for Shadow Priest it's 4 out of 5. For Holy Priest I would rather see a bit of a buff. Just in general, like across the board, to almost every single ability, it just seems like it's underperforming relatively by a good gap. And this priest, I think this priest could use some sort of a minor dispel protection for PvP. Maybe not a small trash buff that actually gives them like extra global on their shield, and that will actually be quite a bit of a buff. So I think overall they're 3 out of 5.
3 out of 5. Okay. Now, Pukez, I know that you do play a priest yourself. Not necessarily. I'm not sure if you play Shadow Priest, but talk me through these priest changes.
Yeah, I play all the specs, man. I'm a huge priest. I've been playing since vanilla, and this mastery change, it's gonna reduce a lot of the damage we do, like in RPGs. But for arenas, it's not a significant change, I don't think. But this shadow form, there's a lot of RPers out there that might like that. I don't really care. They can deal with it. And for the glyph, yeah, I really don't care about the glyph either. But what I do want to talk about is how we need to see some more variation with the class specs, and I believe Holy Priests need to make a comeback. And another thing is, like Reinhart said, I think we need more dispel protection, because you dispel somebody and you have to wait 8 seconds, and frost mages are pretty annoying in twos. They can frost over you, and then they can slow you for days, so you just never can catch them. So I'm gonna give this change 3.5.
3.5. All right. Who? Giga. I haven't hit on you. MNP. Did I hit on you?
No, you didn't.
Okay, so I'll go Giga and then MNP.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so basically all they changed in Priest was Shadow, obviously. I don't think anybody cares about the glyphs. The mastery change from an RBG perspective, it was pretty stupid. Anyone just re-rolled Shadow, and as long as you cascaded off cooldown, it didn't even really matter if your rotation even was right. If something lit up, you just pressed it, then you pretty much top damage that way. So to have a 10% mental anguish reduction, I think that's smart, because that only really affects your Mind Blast, Mind Spike, and Mind Flay. You're still cascading off cooldown. Your rotation is obviously going to be more important now in order for you to maximize your throughput and therefore keep those numbers. Those numbers will still be possible, but to get there, you're going to have to really actually perform now as a Shadow Priest and know your class, as opposed to before when you would just press whatever lit up. So from that perspective, it's a good idea. I kind of disagree with the other notion brought up earlier that it affected RBGs but not arenas. I think it's actually going to really hurt Shadow Priest arena setups, because the rotation is everything. You don't have those 7 players, those massive team fights. You just rely on your cascade damage or your AoE damage, to carry you through on the meters. You have to actually have your rotation perfect. And now, even if you have it perfect in threes, your overall damage is basically going to be reduced more or less by 10%. That seems like an over nerf from an arena perspective, but a necessary nerf from an RPG perspective. That being said, this multi-shadow new meta that we're seeing in RPGs hasn't really stopped or started any teams from hitting any numbers. So, to go after it seems kind of like a waste of time. I got to give this overall a 1 out of 5 because we need disc changes. We need holy changes. We don't really care that Shadow Priests were slightly OP just because they could cascade off of cooldown. That doesn't really affect anything. What we need is we need instant palms in disc. We need these Holy Priest rotation in chakra stance changes to be done in a proper amount of time, not just some random WAD decision and never played again from a PvP perspective. So 1 out of 5, really poorly done by Blizzard.
Oof, wow, okay. MNP, I'll let you have the final word here. What do you think, man?
Alright, for Shadow Priest Mastery, I could honestly care less. I know they do top charts in RBGs, and I mean, you generally expect the DK or the Athlock or the Boomkin to be doing that, but never the Shadow Priest. But it's all of a sudden become a big thing, and I found it to be quite annoying when I'm seeing 4 or 5 Shadow Priests in an RBG, and it's just ridiculous their damage output, and like your healers can't dispel any of, or like the dispelling. I mean, you just get CC'd out of it, and it got a little ridiculous. So I'm glad they're getting a little bit of a nerf, but I think the Disc Priest would have been better to have any kind of change to. Like, I mean, playing a rogue, I think priests are pretty squishy. I mean, I just wreck priests as a rogue. We're meant to kill healers. Just playing an assassin rogue at least. And holy, I'd like to see a little change there, maybe a buff. Just get it in PvP and never see it anymore. But I'll give it a 2 out of 5. I just like to see more changes. That's all.
2 out of 5. All right, let's add it all up here. So we got a 3, a 2, a 1, a 3.5, a 3, and a 3. Comes out to a 15.5 out of 30. So a pretty overall neutral. So it's a pretty neutral score, but that is a 50%. So that will be a fail on that. All right.
It's really funny too the way Steven brought up how it's the opposite in PvE versus PvP, because regularly throughout early PvE stuff, I saw a lot of the progression guilds bringing those holy priests and those disc priests. Usually one disc priest, and the same with RBGs, just because they go against each other, but a lot of holy priests just for progression and stuff. And man, I don't know. I think Blizzard really needs to decide, is disc or holy the PvP spec, and just give one to one and one to the other, and then they can actually balance both of them instead of doing this sort of like half balance of either one and no one's satisfied. Like, it's not very good.
I call disc.
Pull your shit together.
I agree with that. Like, I agree that there should be like
this.
spec for PvP or PvE, or at least talent choices, differentiation.
Yeah.
All right.
Who cares is one filthy casual cannot understand how to press buttons correctly? Bring some more complexity to the class and some.
Yeah, complexity. Yeah, I like that.
All right, cool. So I do want to get it sped up a little bit here, guys. We only have about 3 more classes to cover, but we're going to move on to my friend MNP's here favorite spec. It's going to be the Rogue. So, big changes here. Baseline, Eviscerate now deals 10% more damage. Sinister Strike now deals 10% more damage, so buffs to Sinister Strike and Eviscerate. Assassination, Envenom, 10% buff. Mutilate, 10% damage buff. Combat, Mastery, Main Gosh has increased in effectiveness by 10%, with 10% buff to combat mastery. Killing Spree, here's a really big one, no longer prevents a rogue from being targeted or grant immunity from crowd control effects. Additionally, the effect is now cancelled if the rogue is crowd controlled. Subtlety, Mastery, Executioner, 8% nerf. Backstab, 20% damage buff. Sanguinary Vein, now causes the rogue to deal 30% more damage to targets affected by Rupture, up from 25%, 5% buff overall. Shuriken Toss now deals 53% more auto attack damage. Additionally, they fixed a bug that caused hits made with offhand weapons to deal 15% more damage than intended, so 15% nerf to that, but 53% auto attack damage. Buff, MNP, you're the rogue on the panel, and then what do you think of these rogue changes?
Alright, for the general changes, I like that they're buffing Eviscerate and Sinister Strike, especially for combat. I mean, they're taking away a big thing from them. I mean, you can CC Killing Spree now, so I mean, I think they need that extra little boost. Even though it is really good during red buff, if you have Adrenaline Rush up, Sinister Strike spam is like you can spam 40Ks onto people. It's pretty nasty. Eviscerate, I think that's good. It's also helping combat and sub. I mean, sub needs the damage. I mean, they are pretty bursty right now, but their sustain is awful. They could just have a little bit more pressure. I like what they're doing to Assassin. It's people see it as a non-viable spec, but I think it puts out so much sustained pressure that it actually is viable right now. The only thing that's making it a little gimped is the long burst cooldowns, but putting out even more pressure, that's just gonna make it even more viable, in my opinion. The main gotch, that's they increased the effectiveness by 10%. Yeah, that's their mastery, so their mastery is already doing a decent amount of damage. I haven't really paid too much attention to that in PvP, but in PvE, playing combat in there, main gotch is a good amount of my damage, and I have I think over 50% mastery, and it's just proccing so much, and it's extra melee swings for I think 120% of my weapon damage, and melee is it's your top damage as combat, so I think they're doing good there. Backstab, that needed a buff because I see people just hitting it with trinket procced and it only doing 10k damage, and I mean it's backstab, it should be hitting harder, so I like the buff right there. The Sanguinary Vein, I think that was a pretty good buff just because it's an extra 5% damage, and sub-rogues needed it. Their sustain is crap. They do no damage outside of Shadow Dance and Subterfuge. And then Shuriken Toss, it's not really a thing you see ever unless it's maybe in 2s I'll see it. But I could really care less about the Shuriken Toss. I'll give it a 4 out of 5 just because the only thing I don't like is the CC during combat killing spree. I mean, they can be building up red buff for a whole 45 seconds, and then they press killing spree, and it's instantly gone. You gotta play for another minute and a half or however long it takes you to get your killing spree back off cooldown. So I'll give it a 4 out of 5.
4 out of 5. Okay, all right. Vlad, I'm gonna pass it over to you because I know you have traditionally not been a big fan of rogues. What do you think about this?
Okay, so can I hear your buyout here, guys? Would you agree that if you have an extremely high offensive cooldown, making it immune to CC is absolutely a disaster of a class design? Like, there's a few ground rules I think for PvP that the companies should follow. Like, CC should not do a lot of damage. The CC ability itself should not do a lot of damage. The high burst cooldowns should never, like, there shouldn't be any CC immunity with that whatsoever. That's probably why Frost Decays don't have this killing spree and win one button rotation or anything else like that, because while AMS gives them good amount of CC immunity, there's no such thing as killing spree. So making that as a target CCable is by all means a great change, to be honest. So that's one. Second is people underestimate assassination by a good amount, and I always thought that they're actually going to be extremely strong and viable class. Like back in the day when I was playing like PTI or playing against assassin rogues in 2v2, just when like people didn't realize how OP combat rogues were, assassinations were like demolishing on the damage meter charts. So I really want to see them come back. Overall, I think it's a good changes. And basically, I think I actually think the rogues are in a good spot, to be honest, for once in a lifetime. I think there's a few changes could have been made to the rogues utility a little bit. I mean, if they're buffing their damage by a good amount baseline, I think that the gouge needs to be like 25-30 second cooldown, because I think, or have an increased energy cost, and potentially also burst of speed. God, it's the most imbecilic possible talent ever designed.
They've already nerfed it though. I mean, they already made it from 30 to 45 energy. I mean, when a mage has their images popped on you, I mean, like, you can't just spam burst of speed anymore. I mean, they added a cooldown and energy.
That is awesome, man. Bring out that one scenario that makes justifiable talent. Now, it's like it's ability stacking. It's a low cooldown. Energy cost, yes, offensively it's hurting you, but defensively energy cost for the burst of speed is laughable, if anything. And on top of it, it's sprint and the CC release at the same time. So unless you're fighting against a class who, like you said, frost mages with the frost images, which you can cloak with shadows too. I mean, the talent is still absolutely stupid. Like, it's like, I want to see that talent gone. I want to actually the entire mobility tree is gone and everything would be balanced around shadow step. For example, one talent tree would be increase the range of your shadow step by 10 yards. The other talent could be the lockout with a shadow step is extra 2 seconds longer, or stuff like that. Like make it like extremely skill dependent on the talent tree instead of the stupid burst of speed. I mean, come on, really? A rogue while he's a ninja stealth fucking form running as fast as a mount? Like, what?
Alright, I want to actually, what is your overall rating now?
I think that they're so far 3.5 out of 5.
Okay, 3.5 out of 5. I'm gonna actually go ahead and, from an RPGer's perspective, mainly, I'm actually gonna back MNP here on the burst of speed thing. I actually do think it's in a good place, and the reason that I say that is because you've seen a really huge decline in rogue FCs because you can't just like, it's not really a spammable ability anymore as higher energy costs.
They're not meant to be FCs. They're ninja class. They're not.
But they have been. They've been FCs for 3 seasons now.
They used to tank in vanilla raids. They used to even have something called bucklers, and they'd wear them as shields. I mean, they've been somewhat of a tanky class.
It's been on and off.
Let's think about it. It's a stealthy class. Like, why is a stealthy class should be tankable or should be flag carrying? No, give it to Prot Warriors. Give it to Brewmaster.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that there, but the fact is that it has been like that. Are they in a good place as a flag carrier now? Yes, I think that they are a little underpowered, actually, to be quite honest with you. But Giga, from your RBG leader perspective, I mean, I'll give my opinion on this. I agree with these changes, 4 out of 5, because I think that they needed more damage in RBGs. But Giga, what do you think from an RBG's perspective?
I kind of agree with an MP and you to some extent as well. I think combat was just a little too brain dead and easy. All you did was just, rotation until red and then go. I like this killing spree change. I think that'll get a lot more people into assassination and subtlety like NMP was kind of getting to. And overall, the buffs and the nerfs that went out, I have no real problem with that. Personally, I'm the world's worst rogue, and I found combat to be just the easiest fucking class I played all season. So, for sure, I agree with these. I'd say 4 out of 5, maybe 3 out of 5. I'm going to go with 4 out of 5 just because I'm the world's worst rogue. If I had been any better, I would have said 3 out of 5, but 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5.
Okay, let's hear from Mr. PvE here. What do you think, man?
Yeah, these changes are, I think, balanced. Right now, subtlety was like outperforming the other two. Like combat was good in council fights, and subtlety is what you use in every other fight. Assassination is the worst PvE DPS spec in the game, so it needed a buff. I think it could actually use a little bit more of a buff to see people playing it. I like assassination too. I'd like to see it played a little bit more, but yeah, the shuriken toss thing, I don't know. No one's shuriken tosses. Yeah, so I think they needed it. Give the rogue class like one of those pure, they can only DPS. They don't bring that much utility. Well, actually, no. Some fights they do bring utility. Burst of speed and cloak can do things that no other class can do. So I don't know. I'm gonna give it 4 out of 5. It's decent.
4 out of 5. And Pukez, man, you got the last word on this. What do you think?
I agree with the changes just because I'm not a big fan of rogues. I don't play a rogue, but I do play with rogues in my teams, and I can kind of see some spec variation here. I mean, I think spec variations is better than having, you have to play this one spec. And I mean, I'm just going to sum it up and give it a 5.
5 out of 5. Okay, so we got a perfect score here. Let me add that all together here. And it's, whoa, I almost dropped my calculator there. We have a 24.5 out of 30, so they pass with very good numbers. Let's give them their final score. It's a B minus, so not bad. It's the highest score so far.
Yeah, good job. Hey, you know what? Really smart and well analyzed too. By the way, Reinhart, I have to really agree with you on the fact that we aren't really seeing rogues for their true lore. And, PvE, PvP aside, I think that's something Blizzard has been kind of diverging from, which is what they initially set their lore out to be. And I find that distasteful. So I agree with you. I think a stealthy class shouldn't be able to tank and stuff like that.
I've been playing a rogue since vanilla, and they're supposed to be the class where they go around, pickpocket stuff, open doors, from a PvP or PvE perspective, and just in World PvP, you go like you find someone, you gank them, and you vanish. Like they don't even know what hit them, but like they're completely going away from that. I mean, yeah, I do agree with Reinhardt. They're being a little more tanky, and it's just not part of the class.
Yeah, I just remember on the Wrath of the Lich King where Rogue had 50% MS. God, like if Assassination Rogue opened up on you, when I dueled like Gladiator Rogues, dude, all it came down to is if I could AMS at 3% wound poison and pet suck right amount of time, like if I could have a 2-second fucking window to pet suck and do a couple death strikes, just so I can get back up to and actually hold my own against a rogue, and then kite him with a pet stun just to the wound poison. Like they were so deadly and so terrifying back in the day, but they were squishy as hell. Once I get them. Wow. Excuse me, my girlfriend cooked a steak, and it's a very spicy steak.
Oh, those steaks were good when I was out there.
Yeah. So, but once you catch them out of cooldowns, boom. And I think that's the lore of the rogues that they should be sticking with. In all honesty, like, if I can actually talk a little bit here, like, I remember when Vanish would actually get people out of the stalls as soon as they had the dots up, so the rogues had to be smart about it. So I want to see Vanish to go down to like 30-second cooldown or something like that, or 45-second cooldown, but make it so if you have dots on you, well, you fucked. You better watch your dots, you better save your energy, you better line of sight properly. Like, that's the stuff that I want to see more out of the rogue class. Then, oh, you know what? Participation of the rogues as a flag carrier diminished a little bit. What do you think we're gonna do about this, guys? Fuck that shit. They're ninja class, so let them be a fucking flipping ninjas, not the flag carriers.
Alright, hey, I don't mean to cut you guys off here, but I do want to keep this going and move on to the shaman changes here. And I'll actually start this one off, but we got for Elemental Shamans, Elemental Overload now increases multi-strike damage by 20%, down from 35%. And then for Restoration, Chain Heal now heals for 25% more, good. Riptide now no longer increases Chain Heal's effectiveness by 25% on the primary target. So, overall, my thoughts on this, look, I don't think it goes far enough. As far as Shaman DPS in PvP right now, especially in RBGs, I mean, it's non-existent to begin with. But I think that they needed to go further with Enhancement and with Elemental. I would have liked to have seen... I don't think that a damage nerf for Elemental is called for in any aspect. I would have liked to have seen buffs for Shamans all around. I do like the buff to the Restoration Shaman. I think it puts them in a pretty stable place. Would have liked to have seen a little bit more out of them. But overall, I'm going to put these Shaman changes at probably... I'm giving it a 2 out of 5. I don't think it went far enough. Giga, what do you think?
I kind of agree with you to some extent, man. I don't think it went far enough at all, or like negative far enough in terms of elemental and enhancement. Enhancement maybe not so much, because there is kind of this kitschy little thing in RPGs lately with enhancements, so that's something I don't want to get too far into, but I think Blizzard should have definitely looked into the class in general, because I know all the great LEs and enhancements that we had seen in previous RPG seasons no longer exist. As far as the restoration, 25%, you know, Chain Heal, Resto, it's going to affect Arena just slightly. Nothing that's really going to make or break either way. I give it 1 out of 5. I don't think it's gone far enough.
Okay, let me hear the PvE perspective here real quick.
I think that this is okay, I'm going to separate this real fast. So Restoration first. It's a step in the right direction. Restoration Shamans need buffs. But the only thing that I don't like about this is, like, right now, all Shamans can do is just, like, throw out Chain Heals. It's all they do. It's, like, so not fun healing class, because all they do is throw out Chain Heals. And, like, the utility that the Shamans used to bring to raids is, like, it's gone. They don't have all those cool totems they used to have. Like, they have their healing, their big healing cooldown totem, then they have, like, the little healing totem, and then they've got some other, like, totems that they throw down a capacitor or whatever. It doesn't do anything for PvE. Like, they don't have, like, Manatide totems gone. Like, all their totems are gone. Like, that's what defined their class. Their utility that they just don't bring. Like, every class can Bloodlust now, pretty much. Like, hunters can do it. Mages can do it. Everyone has mages and hunters. You don't need shamans. Like, it's just, like, the utility is so bad. It's sad. It's, like, They all and pretty much shamans all the time do is
You're a
just
poet
please
and you
stand in
didn't
my
know it."
healing rain, stand in my healing rain. Just please stack in my healing rain. I don't do anything unless you stack in my goddamn healing rain. But yeah.
Hey, Steve, this is your shaman. Are you in my healing rain, real quick?
Yeah. So basically, yeah, and like I'm really surprised they nerfed Elemental. I wouldn't say Elemental was overperforming in PvE. They were good on cleave. So was Enhancement. They're like Enhancement was like the burst and cleave class, but I think they need. But they're like in an okay spot. They need something. They're not, but their utility is like non-existent. It's sad. Like, and that's like what I always thought of shamans. Like, they were like the utility class. They were like, they brought all these cool totems that did all this awesome stuff, and now they don't. So that's kind of sad. So I'm gonna give it. Oh God, it's a step in the right direction. So I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. They need to fix a shaman though.
You know what shamans, at least shamans used to be like? They used to be like that cumin in the ingredient, you know, like in your recipe. It was that spice that you could never quite put, you know, your flavor on, but they brought something that was really great. They don't do it anymore. Yeah, that's sad.
And just a little bit of a PvP from a PvEer. I did walk into an arena as an enhancement shaman. Ooh,
how'd it go?
That was not too fun. I was trying to throw my capacitor totem. I'm like, come on, God, dig. I'm like, oh man.
Did that make you want to player versus player more often?
No. I was like, oh God, I'm going back to the DK. I'm like, this is rough. I'm just like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Running around with my axes.
Oh God, that double frost though.
All right.
Nice.
Pukes, let's hear from you, man. What do you think?
Oh yeah. Okay. So for elemental shamans, I don't think it's a significant. Well, actually, it probably is a significant nerf for their damage because they don't do anything anyways, and they're just kind of there. I mean, it's like this. You have the shaman, and everybody's playing either enhance or restoration, and you have one guy in the corner crying. He really can't do anything. He's just like caged in over there. So I think we should let the enhanced shaman out the cage and give them some love, and maybe we could see some thunder cleaves or LSD come back, and restorations look pretty good in my opinion. I think that's a good change. Riptide, maybe they didn't need to reduce the Riptide that much, but it's whatever. I mean, it's not a really big change to me. I don't play a shaman, but
You remember Beast Cleave? I used to love Beast Cleave.
yeah.
Oh God.
That's what I was getting at for enhanced shamans. I think maybe they could do more damage. I had an enhanced shaman hitting on me the other day. Didn't seem like he didn't do anything to me. I mean, I just kited him around on my ret and just like
They're
spammed
kind of that like
buttons.
under the radar sustain right now in PvP. All right, what would you give it?
I'm just gonna give it a 3 right in the middle.
Okay, 3 out of 5.
Yeah.
And I do want to get this wrapped up quick, so if you guys could wrap your quiz just a little faster, but we're doing good. Vlad, I'll pass off to you and then MNP.
So you're basically telling me to go faster. Thanks.
Well, I mean, we've gone for almost 2 hours now.
Okay. Basically, about the shamans, first of all, I want to say is multi-strike is probably the worst stat ever created by a human being. So that stat completely gives them in PvP classes, while makes them viable in PvE. Hence the Windwalker monks. That's why they're underperforming in PvP, because they have a good damage from multi-strike. Enhancement shamans, ally shamans, unholy decays. Those are the classes who like don't do a lot of damage in PvP because they're good in PvE, because how the multi-strike works. So yeah, a terrible stat that basically breaks down the class. In terms of the ally shaman's damage, actually, believe it or not, when we were making Blood in the Water tournaments, the ally shamans actually out DPS the Demolak, and Demolak did his best to cleave with the Chaos Waves. So their damage is actually surprisingly not bad. I think maybe their burst wasn't that bad, so I think they're in a decent position. I don't think they actually needed to be nerfed. And then the rest of shamans need a little bit of a survivability buff in terms of against the melee, I think, overall. I think, to be honest, there's a lot of lack of changes for PvP, just in general. I really want to see a bit of a burst coming out of Enhancement Shaman, but a nerf to their healing, because their healing is OP as hell. I want to see some... I actually want to see allies to stay the way they are, maybe get some interrupt protection, because they're too prone to interrupts in my opinion. as an ally shaman because they cannot just kite as much. And rest of shamans, I want to see them a little bit more against the melee buffs.
Okay. What would you give it, bro?
I would say it's 2.5 out of 5.
2.5
They didn't do anything to them, and all three specs are in a shit design at the moment.
Okay. All right, MNP. I'll give you the last word on this one here.
All right, I'll make it quick. So I play a Resto Shaman, and right now, I mean, they're in a pretty good spot, but these changes really did nothing for them. I mean, I never cast Chain Heal in PvP. I mean, I don't have the globals for that when a TSG's or like I'm facing like WLS or something, and a warrior's riding me, and then there's a lock just waiting to lock me out for 6 seconds. I mean, I never cast Chain Heal. I mean, I spam Riptides and Healing Stream, and the Riptide buff or whatever it was, that's pointless still. And for Elemental, I mean, they have Shamans, they have all the utility that's there. They just don't have the damage for. I mean, there was no point of giving them a nerf. They should have actually buffed their damage. I'm gonna give it 0.
0. Wow. Okay, so not a lot of agreement there. And we have the final result here, which will be 11.5 out of 5. I think everybody wanted to see more from the panel there. That's gonna factor out to 38%. Ooh, so not a lot of happiness out of the panel from both PvP and PvE on the Shaman changes. Okay, let's move on to one which I think is going to cause a lot of controversy here, and this is the Warlock changes, okay?
Oh god.
So we're going to start it out baseline. Corruption, 12% damage increase. Shadow Bolt, 25% damage nerf. Affliction, Agony, now deals 12% more damage, buff. Unstable Affliction, 12% damage, buff. Demonology. Master Demonologist has decreased in effectiveness, 4% nerf. Chaos Wave, 25% nerf. Doom, 25% nerf. Hand of Gul'dan, 25% nerf. Soulfire, 25% nerf. Touch of Chaos, 25% nerf. Oh my god, Demonology just got gutted. Vlad, you play a lock. What do you think?
Well, I've never seen that big of a S-rape ever, actually, by Blizzard, to be honest. This was incredible. Like, Demonology was gutted pretty severely, unless there's a magical scaling to the point where they can get a really high amount of mastery to justify those big nerfs for PvP. It's all gonna be about Affliction, baby. Death Relax can do a decent burst, and there will be probably a go-to burst class after Demonology got nerfed. But, dude, Affliction Luck did not need any buffs. Its damage was perfectly fine, and just like Affliction Luck's work, they always get better with each season. And in the first season, they were this good. If we remember back in Mists of Pandaria or back in Wrath of the Lich King or Cataclysm, the first season Affliction Locks usually suck dick. You usually see maybe 3 to 5 Gladiator locks on the ladders per battle group back in the day, instead of just possibly 5 to 10 to 15 as you see now. So next season, Affliction Locks are going to be extremely powerful. As Affliction Lock player myself, I want to give it 5 out of 5. But in all honesty, I think they just have too much unresolved issues. Like Death Relax, I think, needs a bit of a damage boosting. Demolax need a bit of a better dispel protection. I mean, that damage was really good in PvP, but I don't think it was to that overpowered extent that they needed to gut it by 25% baseline, if not 30-35% baseline. So, and Affliction, I don't think it needed buffs, to be honest, man. I think they should have just retweaked them a little bit for PvP, each and every one of the specs, and instead they just gave it a massive damage boost and massive damage nerf. So I'll give it actually 1 out of 5.
1 out of 5. Whoa, okay.
And
I didn't expect that, but I'm gonna actually completely agree with you, and here's why. I also give it a 1 out of 5. I hate these changes. Demonology, it's a flavor of the month spec. It barely gets any kind of competitive play in PvP, and this was the first season where it had really actually gone up there. Well, first kind of patch. It really only shows up for like 2-week periods, where Demonology was actually able to be played in PvP competitively. We saw it in the Gamers League, Ring of Blood, Blood in the Water, whatever. We've seen these specs in arenas and RBGs. They were good for once. Now with these changes, they're gone again. They're completely, utterly vanished out of the map. It's way too much of an overnerf. A scaling down needed to happen. A 25% baseline nerf did not. They should have nerfed Demonology by about 5 to 7%, not 25%. That's outrageous and way too much of an overnerf. Giga, I'll pass. My opinion, 1 out of 5. Giga, I'll pass it off to you.
I don't know. I like Reinhardt and I like you, Desecration, but I gotta disagree with both of you guys. I think Warlock has afflictions in terms of both arena and RBGs, more so RBGs, but to some extent arenas as well, was underperforming. They were doing good, but they were underperforming for where they should have been. So these, buffs are good for affliction. The Demonology nerfs, I think, are really important, not because they were necessary or because they wanted to get rid of Demonology, but just because Demonology was so kitschy, a lot of people didn't know what was going on. They had the ability to time their procs with certain buffs, and in certain threes situations especially, it became ridiculously overpowered. We saw it in Blood in the Water this weekend with the Demuge coming from Walrix. He would just 120% somebody. The Demuge before the dampening got high at all. So it was absolutely unreal what Demonology Warlocks were capable of. Now, just because a couple people are doing kitschy things like that, does that mean we should take the entire class or spec out of PvP by nerfing to such an extent? Maybe not. And so for that reason, I'll only give it a 4 out of 5 instead of a 5 out of 5. But overall, I think Blizzard needs to relook at the way they do Demonology and maybe even some lore perspectives instead of maybe just giving them this inadvertent ability to basically global somebody in PvP.
Giga, if I may add, I don't think there was anything wrong with Demo. I think their Chaos Wave predictability was manageable and it's fine. The damage wasn't OP. The damage was only OP when they were doing the Demon Bolt, right? Like if they would get a couple Demon Bolts out during their burst, coupled with I thought it's like Demon Bolt, Crushing Wave, Demon Bolt, Crushing Wave. If you do combine those together, yeah, you easily will do like 300k damage in PvP, so that was needed to be nerfed, not just everything nerfed baseline.
You're right. Maybe they did over nerf too many abilities. That could be a possibility. But the problem is the buff kitsch setup that they had going on. It works for everything that they can do. That's the problem, is they don't have any build up, release, build up like other Warlock classes. So it was basically like if you got this happenstance of your proc with your setup, then everything was done after that. It was 100 to 0 or 100 to 20, 130, 140. Just depends on whatever. I think they had to do it. I think they need to relook at the class in order to make it viable, because if it scales with every other class, it's just going to eventually either global or do nothing. And so they chose it to do nothing because they can't possibly have Demonology Warlocks just basically globaling when no one's looking. Like that's
Okay.
It's going to ruin everything else.
So Pukes, I want to hear from you, man. What do you think about this?
Well, I think Affliction as is right now does a little bit crazy damage, and I would have liked to seen a slight damage, but maybe like a 5% damage. Nothing's big. I mean, their damage is fine. I just think it was a little bit over the top. And for Demonology, their is it their Demon Bolt? What was the destruction one last season?
Chaos Bolt.
Chaos Bolt? Yeah, it seems like that. It was like the new Chaos Bolt. It was just almost like taking half your health away with one hit. And I really believe that's the only thing that should have like touched. Everything else, in my opinion, for Demo was fine, because we don't see Demo very often, and I actually like seeing them, but I'll give it a 2.5 to give the score in the middle.
2.5 out of 5. Okay. Steven, PvE, what do you think?
Alright, so just to start off right now, Demo Locks was the only lock spec that was performing in any kind of capacity, and in PvE. Affliction and Destro were not brought to any fight because they weren't good at any fight and the DPS was bad. Demo though, when I see nerfs that are this extreme, like 25% across like everything, like that's all their abilities pretty much. They just got 25% straight nerf, pretty much, except for their Molten, and a 4% to their mastery, which is like just adds to all that actually quite a bit. Because that's when they dump all their damage is in their demon thing. So it's like they're super mastery dependent. So when I see nerfs like this, I'm guessing like one, mastery scales really well as like crit. I know crit always scales really well in PvP. At least that's what I used to know. I don't know, that might be right. But in PvE, mastery scales really well. So, and they like mastery is like really, really good for warlocks, like better so than for other classes. So this is part of that. Then I also have to see their sets. I have to see their PvE set. But what you were saying about the lore, the good news is their new set, from what has been data mined, is less about them like going into Illidan form or whatever and just like spamming out, like just like spamming out their Molten Core procs. And they like get to control demons and now I guess that's what I've heard. That's what Datamine has been saying. So that's kind of cool. So their damage might be coming from other means now, like their demons. So that's what I'm guessing when I see stuff like this. So I'm gonna give this one. Like it's really hard for me to decide. I can't really decide. I'll give it I guess a 3 because when I'm guessing these are warranted nerfs. In all honesty, for PvE at least. Like right now, it would be super devastating if it just came in tomorrow. But with the new raid coming out. When this is, so it'll probably be like, viable and like justified with the new sets. So
okay,
3 out of 5.
Great. Now MNP, you already submitted your rating for Warrior, but I want to get you before you have to go here. What do you think about the Warlock changes here?
I personally think that Affliction should have just stayed the same. They were perfectly fine how they are, but Demonology, their sustained damage was fine. I didn't like having the imps on me as a rogue. It's just impossible to get a re-stealth without popping a cooldown. But I feel like their sustained damage wasn't too good. Like all these spells, Chaos Wave, that was really good, but the only thing that needed a slight nerf was Demon Bolt, maybe 10-15% at most. Like nothing more than that because
nerf Demon Bolt like last 12 patches ago. But yeah.
Regardless, I still feel like it needs
more.
Needs another
really?
one. Yeah. But otherwise they should have left it alone, and they should have left Afflock alone also. That was just a little too much. They're giving Afflock more than they need. Lock was pretty balanced, and now it's just Demonology's getting wrecked, and Affliction is just getting more of what it doesn't need. So I'd only give it a, I don't know. I feel like in Arena, Demonology does no damage until they get a Demon Bolt off. So I gotta say a 0.
0. Okay.
A 0.
So that is
if I may add, what I would like to see kind of ideally situation here is Demonology is all about the demon control. I wish there would be more utility proper training to that as well. Like possibly like be able to bring like 2 pets for a short amount of time, just like their talents is.
Mm-hmm. I like that too. It feel like you're actually playing the spec Demonology, where you're actually specializing in demons, and instead of it's just like BM Hunter, having like your pets do more stuff for you.
I want to see something crazy from Demonology, like you pop something and all of a sudden you take every single minion, totem, and pet on the map and you control it for 8 seconds or something crazy like that.
Or you sacrifice them.
That would be awesome.
Or you sacrifice them and you get all this extra damage and like.
Yeah. Or you can burn
else.
everything on the field and you can turn that into damage
Like
healing.
What if you could become a temporarily warrior by consuming your Raskar? Or like a high nuker by consuming your observer or something. Like, can you imagine how much creativity can you actually build on the lore itself? And I don't think
that could be a lot of fun.
They have so much potential with the Warlock class, and they just don't use it.
Yeah, I agree.
What can you do? Either way, we got a quick one coming up here. NP, I do know you had to go, so thank you so much for joining us and giving your opinion here.
Thank you for having me.
Bye, NP. Thanks for coming, man.
Yep, see ya.
Okay, so we are back once again, and we are onto the warrior class here. Pretty quick change, and its defensive stance now decreases damage taken by 25%, up from 20%, so a 5% buff to defensive stance. Other than that, nothing else. I'm just going to start out here and saying that I don't really care about this. I don't think this really impacts much of anything, but what I think is that the warrior is in a pretty stable spot right now. I don't really mind these changes. I'm just going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. I'll just start out there, but I'll pass it off to you guys because I want to hear what you have to say. Pukes, let's hear from you, man.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I believe it doesn't affect very much at all. I mean, the defensive stats is pretty powerful as is, and a 5% change is not very much, but it is something. So, props to you guys for getting a buff. I will go ahead and give you a 4.
Giga, how about you?
I gotta go the same, man. 4 out of 5, just because, again, like you guys were saying, 5% one way or the other, not a big game changer. That being said, looking at all of the other changes, it definitely is going to mean something. So I think it was a good change. I think they could have done more with the class. 4 out of 5.
Okay. Steven, how about you, man?
Okay.
Yeah, just real quick. They would just bring in the warrior in line with the other tanks. Warrior was in a pretty good spot in comparison to the other tanks. The guardian druid being like the worst. So yeah, 4 out of 5. I mean, they were in a good spot. Like, they weren't bad and they weren't good. They weren't like the best of the worst. They were kind of just like, it's a warrior. They can do warrior stuff. So yeah.
Okay. Cool stuff. And Vlad, what do you think, my man?
Honestly, I think we're kind of underestimating the significance of 5%. I know it sounds a little bit silly. Okay, so if we take Mr. Pandaria Elemental Shamans, they were not viable at all for the first 2 seasons until they introduced a glyph of Lightning Shield that increased their damage absorption by 10%, or it gave them 10% damage mitigation, and all of a sudden, we saw LSD. Remember how Mr. Pandaria ended? Even though I didn't play the expansion, I followed it, and how often would you guys face LSD in Mr. Pandaria? Quite often. And that happened from one simple glyph of 10% damage reduction. So 25% of all of that, on 5% extra on top of it and everything else, and then regeneration is actually not bad. Like, if you look at how consistently damage resistance scales with the effective of health onto the healing ratios, it's actually not bad at all. So it's actually surprisingly a decent buff, especially when it can be on you 100% of the time. Like, imagine IBF gets buffed to 25% all of a sudden, or Blood Presence gets buffed to a 15% damage reduction. It's a big buff. I think we're just underestimating kind of the significance of it, but I don't think it's going to make a lot of changes. As long as Execute is going to be viable, Arms Warriors Walls, they're going to do good. In terms of damage scaling perspective, talking to the couple top warriors, I understand that everybody predicts Arms Warriors to do better than Fury, because how their massive, what I believe, like cliff damage is getting buffed too. And potentially even WLS doing really, really well.
Okay. What would you give it?
It's a neutral. I think it's like 4.5 out of 5, because they're in a decent spot right now, and kind of props to Blizzard realizing that they're in a good spot and not doing anything. Okay. Basically, in terms of if it's not broken, why it needs to be fixing type of thing.
MNP, actually, I want to read out his opinion here. It's unfortunate that he's not here to defend it that much, but he does give it a 0 out of 5, and here's why. He said that the warrior classes do take already, they're too hard to kill, and now this is going to make them even harder, and along with that, enraged regen should not be usable while in a stun, he says. So for that reasons, he gave it a 0 out of 5. So
does NMP play Rogue?
MNP does play Rogue.
Oh yeah, of course.
I don't know, there you go. But that's a fair perspective. Either way, let's add this all up here. So we have a 4.5, a 4, a 4, a 4.5, and a 4. It's going to come out to a resounding 21 out of 30. So Blizzard, congratulations, you passed on the warrior. So now, guys, it's time for the big reveal. Did Blizzard pass? That is the question. So, 15 plus 60.
I can already tell you they didn't. There's no way.
Plus
not
21,
a million years.
Plus 7.5, plus 17, plus, I believe that is a 15.5, plus 24.5. Plus 11.5, plus 11.5, plus 21 will come out to Oh boy, wow, that's bad. They got 184 out of 330 possible points, which means that Blizzard got a 55. Whoa. So overall,
Awkward.
a resounding failure on these patch notes from the panel. That is an F minus. So, it's been a really in-depth discussion tonight. We have learned a lot about these different classes, gotten a lot of different opinions, PvE, PvP, arenas, RBGs, dungeons, the whole 5 yards. It's been incredible. The final score was 184 out of 330 with a 55.7% from our panel tonight. What do you guys think, though? We want to hear from you in the comments section below. Do you guys agree with these changes? Do you not agree with these changes? Do you guys agree with what we had to say? Do you not agree with what we said? Tell us below. We want to know. Guys.
Kinda, I wanna just do a quick summary, to be honest, of all the changes.
Yeah.
I think that most of the negative points that we gave to Blizzard is obviously we had more PvPers in this call than PvEers, and from PvE perspective, the changes are actually not bad at all. But I think the problem arises is not from the changes, from the lack of the changes, lack of the things that we wish Blizzard actually kind of steer things up in the right direction. Like Priest got really bad negative reviews. Why? Oh, I can hear myself. Cool. Because there's no changes to Holy or this Priest for that matter. So, and then all of us kind of trying to say that, hey, Blizzard, stick with the lore, build up on the lore more, introduce more varieties and more class-specific like feel, because when everything got homogenized to such a degree that there's really hardly to see any difference. You see the rogue doing a flag carries or shit like that. Like, I think that if Blizzard actually now, later on in the patches or the expansions, now can actually bring the flavor of each spec back, we could
100% agree.
Enjoy the game a lot more.
Class diversity is needed so badly in this game right now.
Yeah.
Everything feels the same, and it's unfortunate. Everything can do everything. I think that we need more diversity. And believe it or not, I'll go on a limb and say this here. I saw a tweet from Ghostcrawler the other day that said that he never believed that classes should be able to do the same thing. And it's at that point that I realized, wow, Ghostcrawler might have actually been a good thing for the WoW community.
Ghostcrawler certainly was a good thing too. As much as I did,
as much as people
like,
hated on him, he was. I like what he did, honestly.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Even as a PvE perspective, it's like everyone can do, like, hunters can do everything now. Like, they can, it's like, I don't understand. Like, you don't need certain classes anymore. They just, like, who cares about them? Like, and like rogues don't have anything special. Like, they used to disarm traps and do cool stuff, and they don't do any of that anymore. It's sad.
Either way, guys, we will, sorry to cut you off, but we do gotta wrap it up. So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you did enjoy the patch note preview, please do make sure to subscribe to the channel, and please leave us your comments below, like the video, and please go make sure to check out all of these guys' individual channels. They do great things for the WoW community, and you guys have to check them out. Go subscribe to them, go follow them on Twitch, do what you gotta do. Their links are in the description below. Guys, thank you so much for joining me on the Warcraft 101 patch note preview panel, and we will see you guys as we continue to break down patch 6.2 over the coming week. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for watching, and до свидания.
Take care, guys.